It's October 26, 1979. A man lies lifeless on the cold floor of a safe house in Seoul, South Korea. The room is silent, except for the faint ringing of a phone that no one picks up. Blood is pooling around his neatly pressed shirt, staining the collar of a president who once ruled with iron fists. His name was Park Chung-hee, the president of South Korea, the general who ruled like a king. Just a few years earlier, this same man had silenced protests with bullets, imprisoned poets, banned elections, and ruled the country like a dictator, all while smiling on television. Now he's just a dead man with a bullet in his head. But how did it come to this? And more importantly, how did this one gunshot change the future of an entire nation? This is the story of how South Korea was saved by one of the most unlikely assassinations in modern history. Not by a foreign spy, not by a radical student, but by his own friend, the man who was supposed to protect him. This story didn't begin in 1979, but far earlier. Park Chung-hee wasn't always the villain. Born in 1917 into a poor farming family during Japan's occupation of Korea, he grew up in a country that wasn't even free. He watched his people live as second-class citizens under Japanese rule, and that humiliation never left him. In 1961, he took power in a military coup, promising to clean up corruption and modernize South Korea, a country that, at the time, was poorer than most African nations. He kept that promise, but at a terrifying cost. For 18 long years, Park Chung-hee ruled South Korea not like a president, but like a military commander running an army camp. After taking power in a 1961 military coup, Park treated the country as if it were his personal property. He did not tolerate disagreement. He jailed political opponents, banned opposition newspapers, and gave unchecked power to the KCIA, the Korean Central Intelligence Agency, which acted like his own secret police. At first, many South Koreans accepted this. The country had just emerged from the Korean War and was one of the poorest nations in the world. Park promised to fix the economy, and he delivered. In the 1960s and early 1970s, South Korea saw huge changes. Factories sprang up, roads and bridges were built, and poverty dropped. This rapid growth was nicknamed the Miracle on the Han River. But while the economy improved, freedom vanished. In 1972, fearing growing opposition, Park declared martial law, a move usually cue for war. He then suspended the country's constitution and replaced it with something called the Yushin Constitution. This new system made Park a permanent ruler. He could run for office unlimited times, appoint all judges, dissolve the National Assembly, and arrest anyone without cause. No one could vote him out. It was a dictatorship made legal. Criticism became dangerous. People who spoke out, even slightly, were seen as enemies. School teachers who didn't praise the president enough could lose their jobs or worse. Students were watched. Neighbors were encouraged to report each other. The KCIA monitored phones, letters, and conversations. South Korea was being watched 24/7. Protests were crushed. Peaceful gatherings were met with tear gas, beatings, or arrests. Some were taken to secret locations, tortured, and never seen again. Park's goal was simple: keep the economy running, no matter the cost to human rights. And strangely, it worked. Economically, between 1961 and 1979, South Korea's GDP increased more than sevenfold. Exports grew. Big companies like Samsung and Hyundai began rising. To the outside world, South Korea looked like a miracle. But inside, people were angry and afraid. By the late 1970s, things started to break. University students began forming secret groups. Underground newspapers were printed, exposing government lies. Labor strikes started in factories, as workers demanded fair treatment. Then came October 1979. In Busan, South Korea's second-largest city, tens of thousands of protesters filled the streets, demanding democracy and Park's resignation. They burned police stations, attacked government buildings, and refused to back down. The government cracked down hard. Thousands were beaten, tortured, and imprisoned. But something had changed. This time, the people didn't go home in fear. They came back, angrier, more determined. The spell of fear was breaking. South Koreans had tasted rebellion, and they weren't going back. Park didn't realize it, but his grip on power had started to slip. And very soon, someone close to him would make sure it slipped for good. Park saw the writing on the wall, but instead of stepping down, he tightened control. Park made a decision that would prove to be his undoing. He reinstated his longtime friend and trusted enforcer, Kim Jae-gyu, as the director of the Korean Central Intelligence Agency, KCIA. Kim wasn't just any government official. He was a loyal army general, a key player in the 1961 coup that brought Park to power, and one of Park's closest allies for nearly 20 years. The two had shared battlefields, political battles, and national visions. But by the time Kim was reappointed in 1979, the country he once helped shape was unrecognizable to him. Protests were sweeping the streets, led by university students, laborers, and dissidents. Kim had grown deeply disturbed by the police brutality, the torture of students, and the complete shutdown of civil rights. According to his own testimony later during trial, Kim believed the government was on a collision course with collapse, and that Park was being manipulated. At the center of this manipulation, in Kim's eyes, stood one man, Cha Ji-cheol, Park's chief bodyguard and head of the Presidential Security Service. Cha wasn't just a bodyguard. He was Park's right-hand man, constantly by his side, whispering in his ear, and fiercely loyal. But to many in the government, including Kim, Cha was a dangerous figure. He was arrogant, impulsive, and had gained too much influence over state affairs, despite holding no official political position. Where Kim advocated for moderation and reform, Cha demanded crackdowns and violence. He pushed for martial law, broader surveillance, and suppression of dissent. He often bypassed the KCIA entirely, conducting his own arrests and intelligence operations. Kim and Cha developed a bitter rivalry. According to internal KCIA documents and witness testimonies, Cha often undermined Kim, labeling him too soft, too academic, or even disloyal. Park, increasingly influenced by Cha's hardline stance, began to ignore Kim's advice. This deeply humiliated Kim, who not only felt professionally sidelined but morally disgusted. In private, Kim told close aides that Park had lost the vision and had become blind to the suffering of his people. He feared that if Cha remained in power and Park continued to listen to him, South Korea would fall into total tyranny. So Kim made a decision that would haunt the nation. If Park wouldn't remove Cha, then Kim would remove them both. The date was October 26, 1979. The setting, a secure Korean Central Intelligence Agency, KCIA, safe house in the Namsan district of Seoul, South Korea. Inside a private banquet room, a small group gathered for what was meant to be an ordinary dinner. At the table sat President Park Chung-hee, South Korea's iron-fisted ruler for 18 years. Alongside him were Kim Jae-gyu, director of the KCIA and once a close confidant of the president, and Cha Ji-cheol, Park's chief bodyguard and the man many saw as growing more powerful and dangerous by the day. Also present were several aides and waiters. The mood that night was tense, but civil. Kim had arranged the dinner under the pretense of discussing government affairs. But beneath the surface, he was wrestling with a decision that had been building for months, if not years. Throughout the evening, Park and Cha mocked Kim, especially over his handling of the recent Busan and Masan uprisings, where thousands of students and workers had taken to the streets demanding democracy. Cha, known for his aggressive stance, belittled Kim's soft approach to protesters and pushed Park to escalate repression. When Kim tried to offer a more moderate solution, Park reportedly cut him off, a final insult in a relationship that had already begun to crumble. According to testimony later revealed in court, Kim believed Cha was poisoning Park's judgment and pushing the country further into tyranny. In his view, removing Cha would help save the country. At around 7:40 p.m., Kim excused himself and left the room. He walked into a nearby annex where armed KCIA agents were waiting. There, he retrieved his Walther PPK pistol. Moments later, he returned to the dining room. Without warning, he pulled the gun and fired directly into Cha Ji-cheol's head. Chaos erupted. As Park moved to react, Kim turned the pistol on him and fired again. shooting the president in the chest and then again in the head. The 61-year-old dictator slumped in his chair, dead. Kim did not flee. Instead, he calmly informed KCIA agents of what had happened, reportedly stating, "The president is dead. We must now return to democracy." He believed his actions would be seen as patriotic, a final, desperate move to save South Korea from another dark era. But he had miscalculated. Within hours, the military seized control, imposed martial law, and placed Kim under arrest. The country plunged into confusion. On November 3, 1979, Kim was publicly charged with assassination. At his trial, he claimed, "I killed President Park to restore democracy and prevent another dictatorship under Cha Ji-cheol." The court rejected his defense. On May 24, 1980, Kim Jae-gyu was executed. Since then, South Korea has become a beacon of democratic values in Asia, with a vibrant press, peaceful transfers of power, and citizen-led movements holding leaders accountable. Many believe this path toward democracy started the moment Kim Jae-gyu pulled the trigger, a single act that shattered one dictatorship and planted the seeds for freedom. Even today, South Koreans still argue about Kim Jae-gyu. Was he a hero who sacrificed himself to free his country, or a bitter man who acted out of personal jealousy? Park supporters say his rule was necessary, that without his control, South Korea might still be poor. But others say freedom is more important than fast development, and that no man, no matter how successful, should be allowed to rule like a king. What's undeniable is this: if Park had lived longer, South Korea might have remained under dictatorship for many more years. And without Kim's actions that night, no matter the motive, South Korea might not be the free nation it is today. History doesn't just remember heroes. It remembers those brave enough to stop tyrants, even when they sit at the same table.